Hi. Recognize me? Probably not. Anyway, I know even YouTube fans, this has been a long time, but I had to get a job. Turns out that's important, and having a side hobby of making videos that no one watches is actually less important than getting a job. Who knew? Not me, obviously. Anyway, it's been a while. So I'm back now, and, you know, I knew it was going to be a very important album because it's one of the big ones. If you're a music reviewer, you gotta cover it. So I'm back for this, and this is it. Here's a Slipknot's first album since 2008's All Hope Is Gone, the great chapter, the album we thought we'd never see, the obituary to dear departed Paul Gray in 2010. I usually start with a joke that only I found is funny, so, which even still I would still do, even saying that, but I just don't feel right doing it here because of the fact that this is the obituary and the final, just swan song of Paul Gray's work with Slipknot and their love for him, and I just don't feel like even I should do that, even if it's terribly not funny. So, we're going to go into some Slipknot history. When you think of Iowa, most people already know Slipknot is one of the staples of Iowa. You got your famous people, but this is one of the big ones. You got Sean Johnson, you got, of course, John Wayne, the big one, Ashton Kutcher, that terrible guy who played that Superman movie no one liked. Yeah, Brennan Routh, that's it. We have Cloris Leachman, we've got Bill Bryson, those are just my high school, but, it's true. Lolo Jones, there's more, but those are some of the key features, but of course Slipknot is the most famous band to ever come out of Iowa. It's not just opinion, it's true. And with that comes a lot of things, so let's go into some history on the band Slipknot. The band Slipknot, currently the 7, originally the 9, is, of course, Sid Wilson, Joey Jordison, Paul Gray, Chris Fine, Jim Root, Craig Jones, Sean Crane, Mick Thompson, and Corey Taylor. Of course, Paul Gray passed away in 2010, and Joey Jordison was fired, I guess, or parted ways in 2013 for reasons we're not entirely sure of still. But anyway, the early days, the band Slipknot, of course, was formed in Des Moines, Iowa in 1995 with Sean Crane and bassist Paul Gray. Sad. The band they originally started was called the Pale Ones. It was a lineup of pretty much local musicians that were friends that just traveled into basements and played together and had fun. Long after the inception, Joey Jordison joined up to band to just pretty much play in more basements, but they needed a drummer. So he became their main drummer by doing that. It was just one of those, it wasn't really a thing, it was just for fun. Much of the early development was actually more like a late night playing in gas stations, in basements, and they actually had to fund their own recording to self-finance the project SR Audio. For $40,000, they self-funded themselves. I never even knew there was a recording before Mate, Feed, Kill, Repeat. I knew there was something before Corey Taylor, which was that, but SR Audio was the very first recording they ever made, and samples they put together themselves. So Jones became the band's sampler, and after that Mick Thompson was brought on as a replacement guitarist, and they were self-released their first official mixtape, Mate, Feed, Kill, Repeat, on Halloween of '96. It was, a demo, so they had to kind of take it around to people before it was handed out into labels, and they were kind of turned down mostly. They got some local airplay, but that was about it. After that, they went on to make some new material, so they enlisted Corey Taylor from Stone Sour, and, they started to work on things. The gap was filled, and as they had Greg Watts move in, Cuddles. In early '98, Slipknot went to a second demo for labels and began to work with Rob Robinson on their first album. Yeah, that's pretty much it. They went to Roadrunner Records. The band signed 2 days prior, and they remained... No, they went to, I believe, Malibu, California, it says, to work on the album itself. Jim Root was hired, and that was the full 9. They put out their self-entitled album and went on Ozfest in 1999. Wait and Bleed, Spit It Out. The rest is history. They went from there to make Iowa. They finally got to be arena heroes at that point, which Resident Evil, Rollerball, Iowa Tour. I mean, there was a lot of things. From there, Rick Rubin, Subliminal Versus Volume 3, they were able to make some huge leeway with the song Duality, which caught on everywhere. Even people that didn't know them knew them at that point. And then it was Million. Part 2 or Million, before I forget the Nameless, The Blister Exists, hits and hits and hits and hits, and Grammy Awards, and people couldn't avoid them. Even if you didn't like them, you knew who they were. From that, All Hope Is Gone, not All Hell. All Hope Is Gone debuted in 2008, Paul Gray's death in 2010, and then the firing of Joey Jordison. No idea. but it happened. So there's the history. I'm going to do some stuff I wrote up from this album, but I probably shouldn't even need it because I know this band very well, growing up with them. So let's go into this. Of course, as any music fan will tell you, this is probably one of the biggest albums of the year. This, the new Pink Floyd album, the new Foo Fighters album, the biggest rock albums of the year. Hands down, they really are. So it's a very important album to review. Even if I wasn't a Slipknot fan, I would review it because I have to, you know? Now, I'm not going to review Taylor Swift even though it's a big album because I just don't care. Shake it out somewhere else. But this is a huge album for them. It's an album to prove something not to themselves, but to prove they can do something as a grieving process, as a swan song for Paul Gray. I mean, they were so hurt by his loss, we never were sure if we'd get another album. And the bigger blow, again, is that now Joey Jordison has been fired for presumably doing too many drugs to work with them. That's what I've been hearing. Rumor. Sorry, gossiping. It's sad. It really is to hear another one of them lost out of the band after that. So starting off, there's the opener, XIX. It's an album opener of weird sorts for them, but it's soft. It's a distorted keyboard, a glockenspiel, an acoustic guitar, and some very kind of haunted marshland vibes I get from it. It's kind of like something you could see in the next season of American Horror Story, like if they were in a swamp with alligators and a boat and a guy with an eye patch kind of hunting down some people doing scientific water experiments on the purification. You know, I got the whole thing. I'll mail it to them later. Anyway, it's really a build slowly. Corey actually sings, but you can hear the raspiness and the anger in his voice as he sings calmly. And the track builds and builds, and you're thinking, oh, here comes the screaming, angry Slipknot. It all fades away as the floor has just collapsed, and nothing's there. It continues up on Sarcastrophe after that, and Sarcastrophe builds with this weird sound as well, and then it explodes, and they're like, there it is. There's the Slipknot I remember. Corey's back, he yells as loud as possible. It's extremely heavy drum fill comes in, and that drives the song. It's not pre-planned, it feels much more raw and real than some of the overproduced moments on All Hope Is Gone, and I love that. I'm happy to hear that. The DJ lines that come in here add even more chaos, and already over the huge, dense layers. You'll notice if the album goes on, if you're really paying attention, that Sid Wilson on the DJ has added a lot to this album. He always has in the past, but I think he's almost a lot of the backbone of this album in certain spots where there's like holes that needed something. He just brings it together. AOV is a song that hammers along like a military march from hell. It's a classic double bass sound with a mix, huge drum fills, and a sound of guitar riffs over the top. It's Corey screaming until he gets to the chorus, which is of course insanely catchy. It calms you momentarily as you sing along, before there's a huge moment and it explodes again. In the middle of the track, it slows down and reaches kind of like a small letdown moment before it breaks away with this piano. You can really feel the emotional break of just anger and sadness kind of coming together in a very close proximity, and the lines skewing. I think this emotion is beautifully shown here, and it shows how grief is very confusing, and the emotions kind of flow together. Devil and I is one of the singles that was released prior to the album, and you know it if you've heard it. It's a great song. It's classic Slipknot. It is. I think it's one of the better songs on the album. A lot of people don't, but I do. It could even fall under classic Iowa album sound. It's got the sound. It's the sound we're used to. The trade-off between the huge heavy verses and the melodic, slower choruses. They don't need to change up this battle-tested formula here. They know how to rock it. It works. The next one, Kill Pop. It's actually an eerie ballad about drugs to start, slowly. He continues to sing Empty and Destroyed here for a while, Corey. Mostly driven by a weird, like, alternative keyboard, but then a slow driving drum beat. Sid Wilson adds some DJ magic in, and it all leads to an exploding guitar solo where Corey screams, "We were meant to be together." 6 is Skeptic. It's a song that's the most obvious, talking about the loss of Paul Gray. In fact, this song could be his actual obituary in a way. You just hear it. You hear it right away. The quote from the song, "The world will never know another man as amazing as you." This is just the most stylistically different song on the album so far, and it's all over the place. It's a punk rock feel at times. It's melodic death sometimes even, I think. I could be wrong. Cost me if you want. It really, Slipknot has opened up a whole new direction and area to future exploration. You know, that being said, they could do some more interesting things if there is another album after this one, which, who has a clue? After this, we get to Leech. Corey screams the open line of the song. I Know Why Judas Wept, motherfucker. It's a Corey Taylor classic. I mean, it draws you in. You hear that and you're just like hooked. You want to hear it because there's nothing else going on over that. He just screams it out by himself. You can't help but feel for him. It's had to be one of the hardest things to do to honor them, to get back in front of everyone all over again and relive this pain, but I think the convey of that first line conveys everything that needs to be said about that song, and it's a great song. Goodbye, again, it starts up with some eerie synths and alternative percussion as bells, some timpani, even a choir, maybe I heard, distorted in the background. It's divided into two halves. The first half, a ballad, kind of a eerie, kind of out-of-nowhere ballad. And the second half is a very solid sound that turns it up to 11. It's got a metal-style song you're used to, Slipknot. It's not a heavy song, but the difference from the sound being quiet at the beginning and the blast at the end is very palpable. Nomadic is number 9, and this is one of my favorites on the album, actually, because it's a classic heavy Slipknot song with some super weird spoken word things in the middle. It's the Slipknot we come to love, only really weirder than usual. And the chorus is the catchiest one on the whole album, I think. I love to sing along. The scream trade-off is there, and it's great. And I just think this one really shows Corey's creative tendencies and amazing ability of vocals. He just really makes the song speak, and not a lot of vocalists could do that with that weird song. 10 is the one that kills the least. When Corey said earlier in the interview that he was amazed by the guitar work that Jim Roop came up with for this album, I can really see what he means here. This is an amazing power, like slow anthem song, and just listen to the guitar solo. Just listen to it. It says everything you need to say. It's amazing. Cluster, everybody else's personal favorite. It's another, how could you not like it? Upon hearing the chant, you can hear why it's going to be a fan favorite at live shows. I would not want to be near the mosh pit when this comes up. It rivals on 5 on 666. It really is going to be a big deal. I mean, just the echo that adds to it later in the chant, so big, so awesome. Great. Be Prepared for Hell is an interlude with a distorted voice telling people to prepare for hell, thus the Prepare for Hell tour. So prepare, people. The Negative One, the next to last song on the album, is the second single released before the album dropped. Again, classic Slipknot, they kill it. Some crazy DJ work from Sid in the chorus, everywhere, but also focused in the chorus, blasting drums, heavy bass lines, big guitar riffs, screaming choruses, and then, of course, or screaming verses and huge choruses, everything you know. Awesome Slipknot, it's a great song. And the last one, The Rain Is What You Want, If Rain Is What You Want. This one hurts. It's a hard one to hear, but it's a great song. And this is the big closing ballad to sort of just say goodbye to their loved friend. And it's a powerful song when you listen to the words. And it sticks with me, it really does, it's haunting. It's a slow burn. And it's the grieving that they've showed this very lowest moment in their grieving process with us, and I think that's the most haunting thing about it, is that they've shared that moment with us. It's a great album. I really do love it. It's some people that don't like Slipknot won't like this album, but if you're a metalhead that doesn't like Slipknot, you knew that going into this, so you're not going to like it anyway, so what's the point? I think it's great. I think that if you give it a chance, you'd like it, but if you're a metalhead and doesn't like it, you're not going to like it now, so this is a 4.5-star album. I really believe it's one of the bigger albums of the year, and it's a very good album. The highlights on the album: The Devil and I, Nomadic, Custer, The Negative One, and If Rain Is What You Want. Those are my favorites, personally. I think that the album is awesome, so check it out. It's the swan song. It honors Paul, and I think if he heard this, he would smile down on the band and then flick the rest of us off, because people still equal shit, right, Slipknot? Alright, thanks for listening. I got another one coming up right now.